So this is all I want to do is go through, like a few, examples of deaths and stuff, and that have holes in them. Regarding the suspicion behind the, like the corporate media as examples of more, contradictory reports, or stories that weren't actually fully explained to the other side to them. As to why I don't trust the mainstream media, it's not just about like false flag attacks either. These things are more based on deaths themselves, apart from one in connection to 9/11 and stuff. But I'll explain why I don't trust the mainstream media for other reasons. And like I said, first one to tie to Bin Laden's death, and like I said, Bin Laden himself, which already was known that he was a CIA asset around 79, 89. But like I said, first what goes from there is regarding his death as well. And like I said, which I already questioned when I heard, and it was basically how they buried him out at sea after his death itself. I mean, it was kind of odd that they did that.
I could not be prouder of the men and women in uniform saying this is a good day for Americans, that the world is a safer place because of the death of Osama bin Laden, reminding this country that there is nothing we cannot do, again invoking the spirit of unity that we heard him first speak about in the overnight hours in our special report as we first learned the news about 12 hours ago. I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Jake Tapper. And Jake, you've learned more about laying Osama bin Laden's body to rest at sea and how that was transported, how that was fulfilled, and what can you tell us about that?
Well, first of all, David, just in the last few seconds, administration officials have told me that the DNA evidence has come back, and there is a 99.9% certainty that the body is Osama bin Laden's, essentially proving that this was Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden's corpse was taken by the troops to the aircraft carrier, the USS Carl Vinson. He was buried at sea according to Muslim tradition. There was a Muslim seaman who was there, and they wrapped him and said the prayers according to what is part of the Islamic tradition, the idea being not to inflame the Muslim world in any way. Right now, White House officials are fiercely debating whether or not they should release a photograph of bin Laden's corpse. Those arguing in favor say it needs to be done to rest aside any concerns, any skepticism that this did not happen. But I'm also told by somebody who has seen the photograph, it is a gruesome photograph with bin Laden taking a bullet wound above his left eye. It is a photograph that has brains and blood in it. And so those are the issues being debated right now, David.
But as you point out, a lot of questions, people down at Ground Zero asking me just today, are we going to see an image? But Jake, I also wanted to show you these images from the Defense Department, satellite imagery that actually shows the compound where Osama bin Laden was captured, killed. You can see as we push in on it there, much larger than any of the homes surrounding it. The second image actually shows just how high the walls were, upwards of 12, 18 feet around this compound. What more have you learned about the operation to nab him?
In my opinion, like I said, what they said before in their reports was, it was to avoid retaliation from his group or whatever it was. If they saw the body or something, it caused more trouble. Compromise their security. It didn't make sense to me. I mean, they already publicly broadcasted that he was dead, and that they'd buried him at sea. And seeing his body, I don't see how it would make a difference in regards of what they said, threats of retaliation from this Al Qaeda group. It just doesn't make sense. They already knew anyway. What difference would it make? Like I was asking, critical. So why did they bury him out at sea as well? They could have, buried him anywhere, or they could have even shown his body. Someone like Saddam Hussein, I believe, they probably buried in a open, clear casket or something. It was kind of odd that they didn't do the same with bin Laden. To me, they buried him out at sea, or what they said they did, because they didn't have his body. It ties back to the fact he most likely died before 9/11, or around the day before, or ages before that, of what reports said. I was most likely, therefore, they couldn't show the body of a man they'd killed years before this siege or whatever it was, this heist the Navy SEALs did, what they said when they caught him. Obviously his body would have decomposed years before, and wherever his body was or where it went is the reason why they would have most likely covered up the facts that he was already dead, and they said they buried him out at sea. I don't remember seeing any photos of him either anyway myself. What they said, it was too graphic as to why, but therefore there's no photo of his body of what time he was killed, and there's no actual proof that is, that he's buried or anywhere, etc. They made up that they buried him in sea due to Muslim tradition or something, and that sounds like a cover-up all to me. Someone they saw as the enemy, as what he was seen as he did a lot of bad stuff. They wouldn't really give a terrorist or whatever respect to burying his body out at sea and doing this ritual or whatever it was. There's a lot of holes in the story, and as I said, these are things that put more contradiction and more derived suspicion in regards of bin Laden and his death and his actual death date regarding of when he actually was killed or whatever. And as I said, most likely it ties back that he was most likely killed the day before 9/11, where he was known to meet with a representative of America, or years before that. So that's one thing that ties into derived suspicion from bin Laden's death, and most likely why these attacks were false flag operations. And also to clear up again the fact that I'm not pro-Muslim, I'm pro-human, and it doesn't matter where anyone's from on my side, whether they're Arabic or German or European or whatever, or American or whatever, or Asian. Doesn't matter where you're from. I'm a pro-human. I'm against corruption, and these are things I need to clear up. And before I go into the other ones, what derives suspicion. Second of all, the matter of the fact is, it wouldn't have mattered if it was Americans or even British people blamed, or Asian people blamed for the terrorist attacks, which derives suspicion in towards false flag operations. I would have been speaking on their behalf too. As I said, sometimes people, most likely they could have twisted it around and regarded to their mainstream brainwashing of stereotyping Islam and the Muslim religion as a terrorist, that they've got their thumb on it. They most likely would have turned around that and said I was just pro-Muslim, or is pretending, is whatever they were trying to make me out to be, and they stereotype on that one. And it's demonisation of any religion, to tarnish of religion anyway in the first place. Like I said, I'm a Christian, and always have been, but in regards of a true religious person, you never divide or ridicule or demonise another religion in whatsoever. All religions respect other religions of peace, and if they really represent them. And I just want to clear that up. As I said, it's just how it goes though. So I don't have much while I go into this thing. Possibilities I was accused of being a Muslim, tied to the stereotype to make me look like a terrorist or whatever, what they put their thumb on. But like I said before, people were assuming I was, with good reason, maybe out to be jihadist or whatever they call. And it was tied to a few things that made me derive suspicion from that, as to where, again, from visual behaviour and people's behaviour and overhearing things. When I basically played the Holy Are You song I made in 2013-14, and they saw that I have a Christian cross, that people were showing signs that they were assuming I was a Muslim before, until they realised those things. And as to why, to question why they thought those things in the first place were tied to most likely media, and most likely, which I'm not accusing, but derive suspicion from, using dirty tricks and dirty games and falsified claims, possibly to make me look out to be a jihadist or whatever they call, extremist or whatever, and like I was a terrorist or something, which I wouldn't be surprised. But as I said, I'll remind you, it's a recap to say it's derived suspicion from, not accusing. But like I said, so far I wouldn't be surprised. Like I said, I wouldn't be ashamed to be an actual true Muslim, as much as a true Christian that I am. But like I said, I'd never be anyone that represents terrorism and what that represents, which is violence and stuff. Like I said, this is regarding again what I said before. Now I say, like I said, if it was British people, I'd stick up for a British or white Christian or African Christian, whoever it was. As I said, now if the Christian religion was blamed for these suspected false flag ops, I'm sure Christian people wouldn't be happy as much to be tarnished with the same brush. Just because a small group of non-genuine Christians were using Jesus' name to cause killings. That it doesn't mean it because everyone you know, because a small group of people supposedly represent a religion and they go and kill, that everyone else of that religion, which represents peace, and that this is another regards of ignorance and stereotyping. Like I said, I'm sure Christians wouldn't, like myself, would like to be labelled as a Ku Klux Klan or whatever they are, just because a small group of right-wing, you know, white supremacists in America, you know, claim to be Christians, and yet they don't represent religion. You know, no, I wouldn't like to be, or no one else who's a genuine Christian, like to be labelled as a Ku Klux Klan or whatever they are, just because of a small group. And this is most likely what the Muslim religion don't like to be tarnished as either, because of these small terrorist cells and stuff. And therefore I just want to clear up on that. I'm not pro whatever, I'm pro-human in general, and you know, pro-humane people who are victimised of evil, and if they've been accused of something and I've realised it's wrongdoing in anyone's name, no matter where you're from, you know, I stick up for you if you're the righteous. As I say, I work in God's name, and this is what I do. So you know, I'll clear that one up as well. And going from here as well, while following to another couple of deaths with derived suspicion, was Jill Dando, Princess Diana, and Tupac Shakur Biggie Smalls. And as to ties to a mainstream corporate-owned media, as to say, you know, why I don't trust them in regards to those deaths. Like I was saying regarding Jill Dando, and the story I remember, it was something I remember the other week. And like I said, what they were saying was, you know, that even what I saw on the news at the time, well, some deranged man in London or something, you know, some stalker, deranged, mentally ill man had ran up, followed her and killed her on her doorstep. You know, I followed that story, believed it at the time. What I came across not long ago was, you know, derived suspicion. Something wasn't very publicly known or mentioned on the same corporate-owned media. But like I said, she was said to be, not long before she was killed, she was about to expose a paedophile ring in the BBC regarding BBC staff.
Here, hold on. Yes, this. Daily Star, Sunday. Exclusive. Tragic Jill Dando probed BBC pedo ring. Murdered TV presenter Jill Dando tried to expose a paedophile ring involving big-name BBC stars, a former colleague has claimed. Published 21st of July, 2014. According to the retired BBC worker, the Crime Watch host was told that DJs, stars and corporate staff were involved in organised abuse. But when she tried to get bosses to investigate the alleged ring and other abuse complaints inside the BBC, no one wanted to know, the former friend said. Undeterred, Jill is said to have then raised the claims with senior management in the mid-1990s, but no investigation took place. The TV host was shot dead a few years later on the doorstep of her London home. The 37-year-old's murder remains unsolved. Her ex-colleague, who was asked to remain anonymous, said, "I don't recall the names of all the stars now, and I don't really want to implicate anyone, but Jill said that they were surprisingly big names. I think she was quite shocked when told about images of children and that information on how to join this horrible paedophile ring was freely available." Jill said that others had complained to her about sexual matters, and that some fellow female workmates also claimed that they had been groped or assaulted. Nothing had been done, and there seemed to be a policy of turning a blind eye. The source told how female colleagues went to Jill, who was then one of the best-known faces on TV. She said, "I think it was the mid-1990s. Jill was working on almost everything then, including Crime Watch and Holiday. She was seen as a face of the BBC and a magnet for women with problems. She compiled a file of complaints, but was not really an investigative journalist, just a presenter. She passed the information to someone else and they gave it back. No one wanted to know. I do remember she gave a file to senior management. I don't think she heard any more." Other women who complained told Jill that they didn't want to risk their careers by making official statements against individuals, as they would lose their jobs and that bosses seemed to ignore it. "We all decided the best way was to keep our heads down and to always try to go somewhere with a colleague." The BBC said it would look into the allegations, but added, "We have not seen anything to substantiate these claims." Presenters Liz Kershaw and Miriam O'Reilly have both made allegations of sexual harassment at the BBC.
"I've got so many stories to tell, and one day I will. But, you know, weird things went on."
After Jimmy Savile was exposed as a paedophile and a serial sex attacker in 2012, fellow BBC presenter Sally Jones spoke of how he had tried to grope her in a lift. She confided in Jill after the attack, adding that the Crime Watch host said she had had to fend off plenty of unwelcome advances herself. Sally said Jill told her Savile was just a dirty old perv. Jill was shot dead on the doorstep of her home in Fulham in 1999. Barry George was found guilty of her murder in 2001, but his conviction was quashed in 2008.
They've not been told all the truth.
Jill joined a campaign to help children spot paedophiles the year before she died.
Her private life was often public. Earlier this year, she announced her engagement to a doctor she'd met on a blind date. She'd reached a peak in her personal as in her professional life.
Her career was always successful, her private life less so. But after several Mr. Wrongs, she'd found Mr. Right, a gynecologist, Alan Farthing. They were getting married in the autumn.
She announced her engagement in February. Her fiancé, Dr. Alan Farthing, this evening said he was unable to comprehend what had happened. The police had called him out of his clinic this afternoon to identify her body. Jill Dando's natural vitality in front of the camera, her popularity, and her professional stature was such that she'd been chosen to present the BBC's worldwide Millennium coverage. Now, the TV industry and TV viewers are mourning the woman seen as one of the faces of the BBC.
I'm standing here in the road where on 26th of April 1999, UK TV presenter Jill Dando was shot dead at 11:30 in the morning. Pre the 9/11 attack on the Twin Towers, less people would have entertained a possible political motive for the murder. Programmes such as Channel 4's Cutting Edge, Raphael Rourke's documentary for the BBC, and articles in The Independent on Sunday and Sunday Times have all cast doubt on Barry George's subsequent conviction. However, they all beg the question, if Barry George didn't commit her murder, then who did? On the basis of research, much of which was provided by true crime writer Scott Lomax, in this video we are asking people to consider the following possibilities about the real killers of Jill Dando and the circumstances surrounding her death. The story begins 2 weeks before the murder, when Jill became convinced she was being stalked. She was right. The stalker became known as Trilby Man, who was spotted at various locations around Jill's home prior to the murder. He was also seen standing at the same place at widely different times, for no obvious reason. Like all good hat wearers in the old movies, Trilby Man was an agent in this country with foreign connections, and his cover was to own a small garage business on the outskirts of London. How did Jill acquire such a stalker? The answer lies in an April TV appeal that Jill made on behalf of Kosovan refugees. It was an appeal that prompted Trilby Man to send Jill a letter criticising her actions. But why should anybody take offence at such a humanitarian gesture? At the time of Jill's death, we were at war with Serbia, a war that was little understood. It was covered extensively in the news, but as usual, this coverage focused very much on the effects rather than the cause. To kill Jill Dando would not have had much support amongst Serbs in general. However, amongst other things, they were upset that while the Kosovan Albanian refugees were shown on TV fleeing south in desperate circumstances, no mention was made of Serbian refugees fleeing north as the Kosovan Albanians returned. The Serbs generally felt that they got bad press at the time, and they probably had a point. It was unlikely they would want to make relations with the British media even worse by killing one of TV's most popular presenters. However, to some more extreme elements, Jill Dando's TV appeal was like a red rag to a bull. 2 days before the murder, 2 men flew in from Europe. Although travelling on the same plane, they travelled separately and checked individually into the same hotel. One of them collected a package from reception containing 2 of the 3 pay-as-you-go mobile phones that had previously been purchased by Trilby Man. The 2 men later met outside the hotel and made their way to Trilby Man's garage by taxi. The man who was to become Jill Dando's killer expertly set about using the machine tools to reactivate the 9mm deactivated, now blank-firing handgun purchased by the garage owner a year earlier. He also crimped the cartridge tight around the bullet in order to muffle the sound of any shot. Meanwhile, the man who was to become the getaway driver on the day of the murder assisted in changing the number plates on the dark blue Range Rover recently acquired by Trilby Man at auction. On the eve of the murder, the killer came to survey the scene for himself. He was spotted here wearing his distinctive 3/4 length coat, staring down Gowan Avenue at around 8 o'clock in the evening. So what happened on that fateful day? At 6:50 a.m, the dark blue Range Rover containing the 3 men pulled up at the side of Munster Road. Trilby Man, who was wearing a dark suit, but no Trilby, got out of the car and kept watch. The Range Rover moved on, turned down Gowan Avenue and double parked opposite Jill Dando's home. The man in the knee-length coat got out of the car and knocked on her door. There was no answer. The men clearly did not know her very well. Due to her steady relationship with her boyfriend, Jill's visits to her own home were fairly random. The morning was a frustrating one for the 3 men. They were spotted behaving suspiciously near Jill's home at various intervals. One key witness was a traffic warden who started entering the details of the then illegally parked Range Rover on her handheld. However, the driver started tapping on the windscreen threateningly, waving her away. Successfully intimidated, she deleted the details and left. The driver was becoming anxious and phoned the others to say that he was going to drive and wait alongside Bishop's Park to avoid further attention. By 11 a.m, the very agitated would-be killers were almost ready to give up. But at that very moment, Jill Dando made the fateful decision to return home. On the way, she stopped outside Coates Seafood Company about 500 yards from her street to buy some fish at about 11:20 a.m. Trilby man, minus the Trilby, called ahead on his mobile to say that Jill, in her distinctive BMW, was on her way. At 11:30, Jill Dando pulled up outside her home and walked up her short drive. She did not give a second thought to the man walking towards her, who then suddenly turned up the drive also. She let out a short scream as she saw the man with the gun, and a louder, longer scream as he wrestled her to the ground. He pressed the gun tight against her left ear to further muffle the sound of the gunshot and reduce blood spatter, and pulled the trigger. For certain, this man had killed many times before. Was he also the killer of a newspaper owner, critical of the Milosevic regime, that had been murdered in Belgrade in similar circumstances 2 weeks earlier, perhaps? Leaving Jill dying on the doorstep, the man calmly walked back down the drive and made a call on his mobile to the driver. Meanwhile, Trilby man was fast becoming Sweating Man, running down Gowan Avenue on the opposite side of the road in order to catch up with the action. The killer pushed the gate shut with his hand in his pocket so as not to leave any fingerprints, and turned left. After calmly walking for a short while, he broke into a run, but realising he was being watched, calmly walked again. The two assassins took slightly different routes to the rendezvous point at Bishop's Park. The killer detoured left down Kimball Gardens and then right down Edgarly Terrace instead of heading straight down Gowan Avenue. The killer was seen leaning over railings talking on his mobile once more. Also at 11:40, just 10 minutes after the murder, Sweating Man, alias Trilby Man, threw his knife into the bushes nearby. As there was no obvious connection between Sweating Man and Jill's executioner, it was decided that the killer would rendezvous with the driver, while the other would leave the scene by bus. Sweating Man therefore ran back across Fulham Palace Road to wait at the bus stop. He waited here in a clearly agitated state before getting on to the next bus, a number 74. He asked for Putney Bridge. Once at a safe distance, though, he left the bus early. If he had got off at his stated destination, he would have been caught on CCTV cameras. The killer, meanwhile, had made his way to the Range Rover, located at the edge of the park. It was seen emerging at great speed from Donneray Street here at 11:45, carrying two men, one who was said to be very Mediterranean looking. The car travelled very fast through a red light and off into the distance.
This is BBC One. Now the 9 o'clock news with Peter Sissons.
Jill Dando, known and loved by millions, has been brutally murdered. The 37-year-old presenter died in hospital after being found shot through the head on her own doorstep. Tonight in West London, a massive police hunt for the well-dressed man seen running away down the street in which she lived. Also is Belgrade beginning to crack. The Deputy Premier says again a NATO force in Kosovo could be part of a peace deal. Good evening. A massive police hunt is underway tonight in West London for the killer of Jill Dando, who was murdered earlier today outside her terraced home in Fulham. Police said tonight she died from a single shot to the head. Neighbours who found her dying on her doorstep had heard a scream and seen a well-dressed man hurrying away down the street. The shocking loss of one of Britain's best-known personalities drew many tributes, among them from the Queen and the Prime Minister. Our chief news correspondent, Kate Adey, reports.
It's a quiet, pretty avenue in southwest London, where Jill Dando had lived for several years. Shortly before midday, some of her neighbours were alerted that something was wrong. Two women went towards the front door and saw someone lying on the doorstep. A third neighbour joined them.
I heard the scream.
You heard a scream?
I did hear a scream.
Did you hear a man's voice or anything like that?
No man's voice at all.
And did you hear a shot or did you...
There was no shots. That's what I would say was a shot. I wouldn't have thought there was a shot, no.
From your assessment, what appeared to have happened to her?
She was obviously attacked, and whether she was attacked with a knife or whether she was attacked with some sort of instrument, but she certainly she's obviously very shocked what happened, and
She was conscious? She was talking?
she wasn't conscious when I saw her.
What did you do? Dial 999 straight away?
I personally didn't, but the people I was with, the two ladies who also live in the street, dialed the number and had the ambulance services there within 10 minutes.
Taken by ambulance to Charing Cross Hospital, she remained unconscious, having suffered serious head injuries.
Jill Dando arrived here by ambulance at 12:30 p.m. Despite all efforts by hospital paramedics, ambulance paramedics and hospital medical staff, she was certified dead at 1:03 p.m.
Several people saw a man near the house at the time, saying he was walking briskly, possibly running away.
A man was seen leaving from outside number 29 Gowan Avenue, and he ran east down this road towards the Fulham Palace Road. A man between late 30s and 40s, white. He was carrying a mobile phone, he was clean-shaven, and he had dark hair. The witnesses described him as being well-groomed, possibly wearing a jacket or a suit. And anybody who knows that man or anybody else who saw that person out there, we would like to speak to.
The street has been sealed off all day, with a police investigation launched into the death of someone known to millions of people through television, whose neighbours knew her, and who was an outgoing, friendly person, modest about her celebrity. Like many in the public eye, there were reports that she'd attracted unwanted attention from strangers. And last year, she'd had difficulty when a particularly persistent viewer pursued her with calls and letters. Something the BBC took seriously, the problem of stalking being one of the consequences of success. However, Jill was hugely popular and cooperated happily with the press, most recently giving interviews about her forthcoming marriage to gynaecologist Alan Farthing. Over Easter, they'd both been with her father and brother in the West Country.
As far as my dad's concerned, I mean, she was a devoted daughter, and for me, a sort of loving sister. Well, I mean, we're going to miss her, obviously, dreadfully. And I think people who knew her in a way through her appearances on TV, they're obviously going to miss her greatly.
The first of many tributes came from her colleagues at the BBC, where she was held in great affection. In the last hour, the police have confirmed she was killed by a single gunshot to the head. It's rare that a reporter can say that a murder victim was the kind of woman who had no enemies. I can say that about Jill Dando. Her death is a shock to all who knew her personally, and also to millions of people who knew her as a friendly, charming person on television. Kate Adie, BBC News, Fulham.
The Queen said she was shocked and saddened by the news. The BBC's Director General Sir John Burt said Jill was one of the nation's sweethearts. Tonight, Jill's fiancé, medical consultant Alan Farthing, gave this statement to the 9 o'clock news. I am totally devastated and unable to comprehend what has happened. Jill was respected for her professional abilities, admired by all who met her, and adored by anyone who got to know her. Michael Burke reports on Jill's career, which, although it fulfilled a dream, never lifted her feet from the ground.
And then all of a sudden, like I said, some deranged man who has no connection with them kills her on a doorstep. Now, if I was actually a genuine detective or DI, DCI at Scotland Yard, wherever, and I were looking through that, and I saw the possible motives or the obvious motives to point between this a deranged man stalking her at the BBC, I'd be saying the motives point to the BBC and whoever she was going to expose for this paedophile ring. She's about to expose people in the BBC for paedophilia, and then all of a sudden she's killed. Now, if you're an honest DCI, DI, what would you think as the motives point to? In regards, and even more, do you think this deranged man, what they said, who was stalking her, has nothing to do with him? To me, it was most likely a hitman, or like a contract killer for whoever was in the BBC, and most likely set up or something. In my opinion, if I was actually going to investigate that. And that's never been looked into. And as I said, there's no point of obviousness to her motives, but to say the BBC, and there's someone inside there has to say why she was killed. Around the time she was going to expose people in the BBC for for a paedophile ring. And again, this wasn't mentioned in the BBC itself, publicly, or they never said about these things. What they made up, corporate owned media was. Some deranged stalker killed her, and it's a load of crap, that story. Like I said, it comes to YouTube, quotation mark, conspiracy loony nutters, to make those videos on YouTube, which is like underground of a style of music, private investigators to mention those things, and again, we're always ridiculed as nutters, even though we're just private investigators. You got to see us like DIs, or DCIs or whatever, without the authority, but we're no different when they've got the skills. And like I said, that's an example of corporate media not telling the truth as to mistrust. Like I said, Princess Diana, what I vaguely saw about her death, which again wasn't mentioned in the corporate media. French detective, what he was saying was, the Mercedes that crashed in the tunnel, forensics, they found paint scrapings on this Mercedes of a Fiat Punto or something like that, a Fiat Uno or something. Like I said, it matched to a Fiat that he found in a car park not far away in Paris. And like I said, what the official story said is the drunk driver crashed. What was found to be discovered was suspected a hit-and-run driver in regards to hitting the car, knocking off the road. The story goes further in to say it was like a death plot with ties to connections, possibly motive-wise, towards, like I said, Prince Charles. You know, a friend of her who mentioned vaguely, you know, that she'd told her he was something to do with her life being in danger. But all I want to put across is this is, again, these things weren't mentioned regarding either deaths on both all corporate and owned media in Britain. You know, the full stories. Again, what I saw was YouTube, and like I said, how come? You know, why don't they actually reinvestigate these things or put them in the tabloids or corporate owned media?
I'm Patrick Stinson with breaking news coverage. Princess Diana is seriously injured and 2 other people have died following a car crash in Paris. Police confirm the crash has killed Diana's companion, film producer Dodi Al-Fayed, and the chauffeur. You are looking at unedited video from the scene where it happened this morning at midnight time in Paris. It happened in a tunnel as Diana's car was being pursued by press photographers. It happened in a tunnel along the River Seine.
I've just been handed from the Reuters news service what is marked bulletin. This, we should point out as many times as we can, is being sourced through another news organization. We don't know who they talked to put this on the Reuters news agency wire. It says, Princess Diana has died, Sky Television says. Again, this is quoting the Sky Television news service. We've been listening to BBC. We're going to go back to BBC coverage. This all happened at midnight Paris time this evening. There's one of the motorcycles believed to have been trailing at a high rate of speed, the Mercedes-Benz carrying Princess Diana. For all the viewers joining us at now 1 a.m. Eastern Time, New York time in the United States, we have all evening long been covering an unfolding story that took a very, very tragic turn, with confirmation from Buckingham Palace tonight that the world has lost Princess Diana at age 36, dead in a car crash in Paris along with her companion of the past several weeks, Dodi Al-Fayed, one of the heirs to the Harrods department store fortune, the venerable department store fixture in London. There is the scene of the wreckage, a high-speed metropolitan tunnel, well lit, in the city of Paris tonight. That was a Mercedes-Benz 600 series sedan. In the front part of the car, the 2 flashes of white there are the deployed airbags, the remnants of the airbags. On the left is just a restraining post on the solid line. This is a 2-way tunnel with no solid divider between directions of traffic. Police in Paris put it on the back of a flatbed Renault truck with flashing lights, and once affixed to the truck, and look at the onlookers hanging onto the edge of that precipice. It was driven away. There's the recognizable back end of the Mercedes sedan, and there is the unrecognizable front end after what must have been, what almost to a person, everyone who has come on the air tonight agrees was a high-speed collision there in Paris tonight. Dodi Al-Fayed dead, Princess Diana dead at the age of 36 in a terrible car accident. The President of the United States was informed earlier this evening, and he and the First Lady have sent their condolences to Buckingham Palace. William and Harry, her 2 children, were told by their father. There are reports that the royal family, they are in the midst of a late summer vacation at Balmoral in Scotland, will be winging their way now directly and quickly to either Paris or London. Overnight or first thing in the morning. It is now almost sunup in most of Europe anyway, and the world is slowly learning of this news that is unfolded tonight. The British ambassador, we were told all evening, the British ambassador to France was at bedside during treatment, which we now know got rather frantic as they started to lose a pulse. The official cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest following massive trauma, head injuries after a very high-speed collision. Doctors noted that these injuries were consistent with a high-speed car accident
News Channel. And now, Sue Simmons, Dean Shepard, Al Roker, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4, live at 5.
The paparazzi arrested after Princess Diana's deadly car crash are put under formal investigation by a Paris judge.
Good evening. The 7 men held for questioning in Princess Diana's death could face charges of involuntary homicide.
And while many are pleased with the judge's decision to put the photographers under formal investigation, it's done little to ease the profound grief over the death of a princess. We begin our team coverage with News Channel 4's Michael Hill in London. Michael?
Well, they're under formal investigation. It's just a step away from formal charges, we've been told. Formal charges of involuntary homicide and failing to help the princess and the 3 men trapped in the crash wreckage. Now, a lawyer for one photographer said his client took Diana's pulse to see if she was still alive. The judge released all 7 photographers. He told 2 of them, "I'm releasing you on bail and you are not to practice journalism while this case is pending."
Londoners welcome the French prosecution of the photographers who allegedly swarmed the car carrying the princess and may have caused a fatal crash in a Paris tunnel.
They caused the woman's death. It's been a known fact that they've been hounding her for years. They've contributed to it. They must pay their dues.
If they had not been there, the paparazzi, she would still be here today, and nothing will change that.
I think it's too early for most of us here in the UK to start to be vindictive.
The investigation focuses on what the photographers did, if anything, in the role of the driver who allegedly was drunk. But a lawyer for one photographer said all 7 photographers are sacrificial lambs in a display of showbiz justice carried out to improve France's image. One Briton said he hopes the prosecution does some good.
I would like to think this sends out a fairly powerful message that you can't hound these people. Eventually there'll be a tragedy.
One morning at Princess Diana's Kensington Palace called her a goddess of good because of her humanitarian and charitable efforts. Now Buckingham Palace has established a memorial fund to continue Diana's work.
The fact that people can contribute something which they knew she believed in forever, I think it's a great idea.
Fans of Diana continue to shower the landscape with cards, caring, and condolences.
The turnout of people here, no market research, no statistical analysis would ever have guessed how popular she really was.
And so when you met her and opened the door, she just immediately engaged you in conversation?
Yes, yeah. In fact, I nearly bumped heads with her because she dropped a T-shirt that she'd been given for William at the time, and I bent down to pick it up, and she bent down at the same time, and she laughed. You know, she thought that was quite comical.
At St. James Palace, where Diana's coffin is lying, fans keep coming, and so do the tears after standing 6 hours in line.
There's a young lady in there who's done much for the world. She's helped poor, she helped rich, she helped the young, she helped the old, and she's shone like a light in the sky. When they took her on Saturday, really another star went out.
One media watch group here is urging all of the newspapers to donate all of Monday's profits to the memorial fund, and it's urging a national boycott of the papers on the day of the funeral. On Saturday, there'll be an official minute of silence and an estimated 2 million spectators lining up for the funeral procession in London. At Buckingham Palace, Michael Hill, News Channel 4.
So the rumour mill ground on. Meanwhile, an exhaustive 2-year French investigation left no room for doubt. Blood tests concluded that the driver of Diana's car was more than 3 times over the drink-drive limit. He was also taking prescription drugs, which warn users not to drink. He lost control of the Mercedes as it sped into the Alma Tunnel at more than twice the speed limit. The French investigation found a Ritz bar bill for 2 glasses of Ricard for Paul's table. Princess Diana's bodyguard said they were unaware that Paul was drinking alcohol, as his Ricard looked like pineapple juice. Paul's autopsy made it clear that he had consumed far more than those 2 glasses. CCTV footage from the Ritz on that fateful night has been used repeatedly to show that the driver, Henri Paul, had no appearance of being drunk, and that in these staccato pictures he is seen acting perfectly normally. So, the conspiracists argue, they must have taken the blood samples from someone else. Could the official investigation itself be contaminated? Channel 4 approached the head of the French police investigation to find out. Jean-Claude Moulez secured the crash site on the night and later attended Henri Paul's autopsy. In his first ever TV interview, we asked him, could there have been a blood swap?
Impossible. The rigor with which the sampling procedure is conducted body by body make it impossible. Every corpse has a reference, a registration number, a name, a forename, and a registration number. In addition, the administration prints a sticky identity label. First name, registration number, all of which are done in real time.
À identifier les prélèvements qui sont faits en temps réel.
Henri Paul's parents were shocked at the idea of their son being drunk, so the investigating judge Hervé Stéphan double-checked the results. He personally supervised the analysis of a second set of samples from Paul's corpse. To remove all doubt, he recorded the entire process on video.
The second set of results on the autopsy confirmed within a tenth of a milligram the first set.
Other findings from the autopsy were selectively leaked. It is argued that the blood must have been taken from the wrong man, as there was a strangely high level of carbon monoxide in Paul's blood. Had his level been that high, he would have appeared unstable and hardly able to walk. There were 2 levels of carbon monoxide taken from 2 parts of the body. One was high, 20.7%, and one was low, 12.8%. Averaged out, they would be consistent with a heavy smoker. Henri Paul was seen smoking throughout the evening by both bodyguards and paparazzi. The French investigation concluded that the levels were of no significance. Commander Moulez has no doubt about the conclusions.
Personally, I go back to the authority of the judge's findings. It was a traffic accident, which is sad. But from the legal point of view, a traffic accident, as I've said. Full stop.
Immediately after the accident and before any facts were known, the investigative journalist Tom Bauer penetrated the closed world of the Ritz.
And I was told to report to an airfield where the Harrods helicopter would be taken off. We got to Paris. I was taken straight to the Ritz. I waited around for about an hour, and then I was taken into a room and told this is where all the staff will meet you. And one by one, all of the senior staff, the low staff, everyone who'd come into contact with Diana and Dodie on that fateful day were brought into the room for me to interview. The atmosphere in the Ritz, you can imagine, was pretty tense. The staff were absolutely shaken. It was an extraordinary opportunity to sit there and talk to them all, even before they talked to the police. The police hadn't yet got to the Ritz. So I sat and talked to them one by one as they came in.
Bauer discovered by talking to bodyguard Kes Wingfield the critical decisions that had immediately preceded Diana's last journey. They were decisions that would haunt Fayed forevermore.
The key point was that they had agreed secretly between Dodie and Mohammed on the phone very late at night that to avoid the paparazzi they were going to conduct this extraordinary escapade using a hired car from the back of the Ritz, driven by Henri Paul to escape the paparazzi.
Henri Paul was acting head of security at the Ritz and not a licensed chauffeur. But in the phone call, Mohammed Fayed personally sanctions the plan for Paul to drive. Closed-circuit TV picks up the story. The bodyguards insist that at least one of them should be in the car. After an argument, Dodie agrees to take Trevor Rees-Jones. The party leaves by the back door with Henri Paul, but without the normal backup car. The 2 fully qualified official chauffeurs are left at the front of the hotel. The rest is history.
This was one of his cars, going from one of his hotels to one of his apartments, with one of his security men at one side of the car and his driver at another side. Obviously, I think Mohammed Al-Fayed will every day wish he'd done something different. This is a guy who's incredibly powerful, incredibly rich, who can do anything he wants within reason, and he was unable to stop this happening.
He had to explain why he'd agreed late at night to this madcap scheme to take her out the back door with a drunken driver in a rented car at ludicrous speed across Paris. There's so much for him to explain, and it is natural to Mohammed Fayed, when he's in that sort of situation, to come up with all sorts of conspiracies and stories and scenarios which don't fit the truth, but actually do protect his own reputation.
I already mentioned it, and I'm mentioning it all the time. It is absolute black and white, horrendous murder.
Before Princess Diana's body had left France, 2 top Fayed officials visited the Paris police headquarters to convey some potentially crucial information. They told the gendarmes that Dodie had allegedly received death threats, thereby sowing the first seeds of conspiracy theory. Channel 4 has seen a new, as yet unreleased video documentary produced by Mohammed Fayed. It's called The Alma Tunnel Mystery. It maintains that there are just too many unanswered questions surrounding the crash. It claims the British royal family has a long history of murdering opponents who disagree with it. It accuses Prince Philip of having Nazi links in his past and of masterminding the plot to murder Diana through secret agents from MI6. These claims have fallen on sympathetic ears, appealing especially in Arab countries.
It will be extremely difficult to convince the Arab world that it was a car crash.
And it wasn't really, there wasn't any plot to kill the Princess Diana. Simply because, actually, first, the Arab people are stubborn. Second, actually, they don't like, or they don't trust the British government or the British intelligence service. But in the Arab words, people are great believer of conspiracy theory. And when, as I said, the dream, this nice dream, a fairy tale, a princess, beautiful one, is going out with Egyptian dark-faced chap, they were extremely happy for that. It is like children's stories, to be honest. So suddenly, this dream, this could not come true.
Other conspiracists have taken the story further, like the American Jeffrey Steinberg. His organisation believes the royals are involved in all sorts of international conspiracies, and that the Queen is the head of a cocaine ring, and that MI6 is her personal secret service. His acute eyesight managed to spot the MI6 agents on Ritz video pictures, waiting in the crowd just before the crash.
There were two men in the Place Vendôme in front of the hotel, from the point that Diana and Dodi arrived right up through the point that they left. And these two people have not been identified by anybody. They were not guests in the hotel, they were not tourists, they were not paparazzi, and they were clearly there at the edge of the crowd surveilling events for a good 2.5 hours. If, and I emphasize the word if, we are dealing here with a professional assassination. A target of opportunity, a decision by a highly professional team on the spot, the kind of thing where you could activate something and still have the option of calling it off at the last minute.
One theory that gained enormous credibility was the idea there had been a flash before the crash, which had in some way destabilized and blinded the driver. A motorcyclist was apparently seen overtaking the speeding Mercedes and producing an enormous flash. This idea was soon followed by claims that there were well-known anti-personnel devices, which were used by secret agents to shine light in people's eyes and blind them. It was even said to have been used in an alleged plot to kill the Serbian leader Slobodan Milosevic in a tunnel car crash. The evidence that such a device might have been used in the Paris crash came from a single witness, Francois Levistre. He claimed on British and US TV that he had actually been in the Alma tunnel and he had witnessed the flash before the crash. Channel 4 has discovered that Levistre is a convicted petty criminal. His account matched no other witnesses, and the French police discounted him as a reliable source. We showed his TV interview to the head of the Paris police investigation, Commander Moulez. He did not believe Levistre.
There was a big white light like this one. But quick, and it's then, when you're in the tunnel, and on top of that in the dark, you can see. You're forced to. It's like a race.
C'est hallucinant,
It's staggering. It's someone's mind playing tricks, imagination run wild. I would call this, in my opinion, nonsense. That this witness might have seen some flashes? Okay. Some paparazzi overtaking him? Perhaps.
Did you ever hear this allegation made by this witness, Francois Levistre?
Yes. Now I'm starting to remember. I remember, and he wasn't the only one. There were many people who wanted to make themselves out to be more important than they were in reality, who needed to make up stories and tell things to show off. But very quickly their testimonies, which were handled with extreme caution, were destroyed from start to finish. This is the job of the examinations that we do at the Criminal Brigade. We take everything through right to the end, and we see if the person, the witness, is credible or not. We have ways through questioning to separate what is well-grounded from what is imagination storytelling, which is his way, and it never fails.
Key to another conspiracy theory is the role of a white Fiat Uno, which was seen by two witnesses leaving the tunnel. The Fiat's paint marks were found on the wrecked Mercedes. The fact that the Fiat has never been found has added to the mystery. Some suggest it was used as a murder weapon.
Vehicular homicide would imply basically that this was a willful intent to cause a collision that would either be fatal for the passengers in the car, in the Mercedes, or would at least severely injure the people in the car.
Other critics of the investigation were astounded that the French could not find the elusive Fiat.
You've got the biggest car hunt of all time. Why couldn't you find it? Why didn't you get off your asses quicker and get it? I just think it's a perfectly valid criticism. But that failure, we have to accept, has added even more fuel to the conspiracy fire, because you take that car out of the equation, then you're left just with Henri Paul losing control and whacking a pillar, and the accident happening, and there's no third-party involvement that we can establish as a fact. We now have an absolute fact that there was a third party involvement. There was another car.
A £1 million reward was posted on the Fiat website as payment to anybody who could find the missing Fiat. No one knows how many hits the site attracted, but before long, Fiat's head of security had managed to track down the car that had eluded the biggest French car hunt in history. It was found in Paris itself and traced to a paparazzo, James Andonson. Andonson turned out to have an immediate connection to the events. He had been photographing Dodi and Diana in the south of France. Then the mystery deepened when he apparently committed suicide, setting fire to himself and his car on army land. Some friends were allegedly skeptical about the way he died, which fueled speculation about the possible forces of darkness. Commander Moulez personally interviewed James Andonson, and he found his Fiat off the road and on blocks.
He was using the Fiat way before, certainly before 1997, since the car had 325,000 kilometers on the clock. When a car like this has done 325 or 400,000 kilometers, it's given up the ghost. And that's why he had placed it on bricks, and he wasn't using it anymore. I believe the car wasn't even insured, so that explains it.
Forensic tests proved decisively that the paint did not match the car that had hit the Mercedes. French scientists also established that the speed of the Mercedes had caused the crash rather than its brush with the Fiat. Channel 4 has obtained evidence and police diagrams that illustrate the crash between the Mercedes and the Fiat. It shows the position of the broken taillight of the Fiat and the glass from the wing mirror of the Mercedes. We showed the diagrams to the leading British car crash expert, Dr. Murray Mackay.
The marks, for example, on the right side mirror of the Mercedes would have come from the left rear corner of the Fiat Uno, and that the brake light cover on the Fiat Uno would have been damaged, consistent with marks on the right front wing of the Mercedes. So they were able to establish that this was a minor scrape, a glancing contact that wouldn't have deviated the path of the Mercedes significantly. It's just a brushing contact, that it wasn't a major impact in any sense.
So the Fiat Uno could not accurately be described as the cause of the crash?
I don't think so. I think it's an incidental event. The car is clearly being driven at very high speed. The entrance to that tunnel is a little challenging in the sense that you have a dip that you go over a rise down into the tunnel itself. At the same time, you have a left-hand bend. If you're driving at high speed, if you're drunk, then it's easy to get out of control.
The Fiat
Uno was not going very quickly. And you also realize that for a car going at high speed, there is a slope at 6 degrees and a kind of bump, which might have unbalanced the Mercedes, or at least Henri Paul's driving. Henri Paul, who perhaps was surprised to lose control of his car, and on top of that the brush with the Fiat Uno, we know the rest.
Despite the French forensic conclusions, the failure to find the Fiat harmed the reputation of the investigation and provided much scope for attacking French competence. The French emergency services also came under attack. No one appeared to understand how the French medics worked. When the ambulance crew arrived, Diana's condition was extremely serious. She had sustained major injuries and her life hung in the balance. Critics could not work out why it then took the ambulance 1 hour and 43 minutes to reach a hospital which was just under 4 miles away. Then it was the turn of the French police to come under attack for reopening the tunnel so soon after the accident. Once the tunnel had been examined, it was washed down and open to traffic within 24 hours. Conspiracists argue that the scene of an accident of this magnitude would normally have been preserved for much longer. In their eyes, the speed of cleanup pointed to a cover-up. So was the tunnel cleared too quickly? Commander Moulez took that decision.
The scene was preserved straight after the accident until I arrived. When I arrived, I continued preserving the scene. But once my work was done, there was no reason. I had not found anything else. I wasn't going to seal off the tunnel and stop the traffic. It's unthinkable. The procedures which I put into effect were very, very precise. Nothing was left to chance. We combed it millimeter by millimeter. No other element significant to the investigation could have been discovered. I had no reason, once the Mercedes had been taken away, to block the scene. I wasn't going to turn it into a shrine.
Did Commander Moulez make the correct decision?
Well, I can't see that there was anything lost in, for example, the time that was spent at the scene and then
when you've finished, as is typical with any even fatal road accidents, you know, the scene is cleared, it's time to get traffic moving. You record the evidence photographically, you take measurements, you collect components, debris at the scene. I can't think that there was anything more that would have been achieved had they kept the tunnel closed for another 24
there's
hours.
got to be a reason behind that. And to me, it's always cover-ups. And the more I see ties to, holes being in stories and lies, the less I mistrust the media in those terms. Like I said, regarding Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls again, and this is stateside, again ties to, what with detectives and stuff. Basically, holes in that story, although I'm not fully aware of the whole story was. Basically, all I remember is a American police detective for LAPD, who again was warned as much as the French one regarding Princess Diana to stop investigation, and what he saw was, but in this case, ties to either the New York Police Department or Los Angeles Police Department regarding police officers who were most likely, were paid to kill both of those men. And I vaguely remember, but all I remember, let's just say this one, there's a lot of holes in, their deaths as well, and all these things put together, they derive suspicion and make me mistrust the mainstream media more as tied to suspected false flag ops, and this is why I keep I don't listen to them. I mean, if you found or looked through all those stories, you'd see there's a suspicion derived on corporate-owned media, and what it's tied to say is to be owned by bankers or the government themselves, whoever it is, as to why they don't put these things on their channels, and they only tell you what they want you to hear, and they're not the real story as to why the real stories or the bigger insight behind them are on YouTube and stuff, where they're ridiculed and stuff as loony nuts theories. And the more you start to see these holes in these stories, the less you should be trusting the media, and what you're shown to see is the truth. And most likely, with all of these things, that the more they're discovered to be lies tied to corporate-owned media, the more you see that you're basically having bullshit spewed to you, and they're only telling you what they want you to hear, and they're not the real story.
The murders of rap superstars Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls have been the subject of exhaustive investigations, relentless speculation, and a web of conspiracy theories and dark secrets. Now, for the first time, this is the riveting account of the task force that finally exposed the shocking truth behind the deaths of these two rap music icons, including interviews with detectives and witnesses never heard from before, with shocking evidence sourced from hundreds of police case files.
That was Tupac. That was Tupac. No, he got shot. No, he got shot.
Who besides yourself down there knows, for one, knows about these guys killing Tupac? Pretty sure everybody around here knows about it.
In a taped confession never before shown on film.
Which of those four is it when you talk to them about murdering Tupac?
Like, man, we'll wipe their ass out quick. It's nothing. Yeah, we were on the million. Right there, it's a perfect opportunity, baby.
I remember it was a white Cadillac.
Here they come in that BMW like Jane Carter.
We're man shot in our car right now.
And I ain't ever told nobody that story, man.
Murder Rap. Inside the Biggie and Tupac murders. Coming soon.
So I always keep on that one, and I advise people. I don't tell them what to do. I always let them take their own choice in regards of whether they trust the media itself. But as I say, I never do. Like I said, Lee Rigby's death, what I generally remember about that was ties with the MI5, with these two men, who most likely, what I vaguely remember, something to do with them. They actually had acknowledgement of the two men who killed him. And like I said, it was allowed to happen. Let's just say that one briefly. It's just odd, And like I said, it was most likely tied to some kind of false flag operation technique regarding the two men who were said to be representatives of Islam, and stuff, as to say it was most likely something to do with a Middle East conflict or whatever went from there. It was, you know, regards for the support for something going on over there, as much as 7/7 was suspected. Like I said, briefly put, Tony Blair was about to be, you know, taken down out of his position as Prime Minister. Like I said, Bush needed British troops over in Iraq at the time, and all of a sudden, basically what happened over there was 7/7, and then all of a sudden the British were told to keep troops in Afghanistan or Iraq, and Tony Blair kept his seat as well. And as I said, that would derive suspicion on regards and motives of that. Briefly put, what the ripple effect said.
He came into the BBC, we conducted the interview. Immediately after the interview, I'm told 3 people from Special Branch were in BBC premises. They arrested the man, and so, you know, very dramatic events tonight. In the interview itself, I think it shows quite an interesting portrait of Abu Nuzayba, an interviewee, and also the suspect, Adi Balajo. And I started by asking him about his early childhood biography. How long have you known Michael Abdaloja?
We met roughly around 2002, early 2002.
And where did you meet?
We met in Romford, Essex.
And what was the circumstances of you meeting? Was it a social contact? Was he a friend? Or?
No, I mean, I used to go down there like to chill out with some of my friends, basically. And during the course of going down there, we kind of like, I think one day we just bumped into each other. It's kind of like strange, because we didn't quite often see a lot of like black guys down there. So it was like, how are you? What's going on? How's everything? And we kind of exchanged numbers, and you know, from there, kind of the relationship built up.
And at that time, were you both non-Muslims? Because I understand you were both reverts to Islam.
I mean, I wasn't in Islam because I came to Islam 2004, late 2004, basically. And he came in about 4 months after me, basically.
Now, it is well known, it's established on the record that he was known and he knew Omar Bakri Mohammed and Al Mahjaroon at the time. Did you know him in those circles?
Yeah, I mean, he used to attend some of the activities there, but he was quite an independent guy. He was never stuck to one particular group or anything like that. He would go to various circles, listen to various people and so forth. So he wasn't really kind of like stuck only with, Omar Bakri or Anjem Choudhury and so forth. Like, he would float about, basically.
But he knew them?
Yeah, he was aware of them, yes. I mean, he'd had to attend 1 or 2 events, yes.
But at that time, I mean, obviously I've interviewed Omar Bakri Mohammed on many occasions, and Anjem Choudhury too.
Yeah.
One of the core beliefs and things that they aspire to is Sharia law, for example, in the UK.
Yeah.
Was that your position and his position at that time?
Myself, I had that position, which changed later on. But Michael never took that position, actually. He thought it was more sensible, for Muslims to live in Muslim lands and basically want to, live by the Sharia in Muslim lands. He thought that made more sense as opposed to basically living in the West and trying to basically implement the Sharia here.
So did he consider emigrating to a Muslim land?
Yeah, I mean, he did many times. I remember he wanted to do some qualifications in relation to teaching, and he wanted to do a qualification in relation to fitness training as well, I think, which he eventually did. And he wanted to really kind of use that to maybe go abroad and live in a Muslim country.
Well, that's some of the background to the suspect, Adi Balajo. But did Abu Nuzayba give us any clues as to what actually turned a switch in this man's head and made him into this violent person, potentially? He did. He said that about 6 months ago he had a conversation with him in London, and he says that Adi Balajo told Abu Nuzayba, our interviewee, that he had had a very bad experience in Kenya. And now we don't have any way of independently confirming this, but this is the account he gave us. He said he travelled to Kenya, he was arrested and picked up by the Kenyan authorities. He alleges he was tortured and abused, and he says that he noticed that fundamentally changed his mindset after that experience. I think we're going to see something here. Now, you described Michael Abdaloja as, in a way, as a gentle man, the way you're describing him.
Yeah.
The contrast with someone who is capable of murdering someone on British streets is very, very stark indeed.
Definitely.
How do you understand that?
Yeah, I mean, I believe certain events that happened to him recently kind of had an impact in shaping, that change. And although that change wasn't necessarily one that became overt, aggressive or anything like that, he just became more reclined and less talkative and so forth. Like, he wasn't his bubbly self, basically, and. The recent events were, about 6 months ago, he basically just turned up one day, just knocked out of the blue, no number, no anything. And he said that, look, basically what's happened, I went to study in Kenya. And, when I got to Kenya, in a particular village, we were rounded up by Kenyan troops, basically. And we were taken to basically a prison cell, okay? And we were all interrogated one by one. And he said that basically when my turn came, basically I didn't speak to them. Obviously, because generally like here, you say no comment and so forth, so I wouldn't accept, to speak to them.
And he said that basically the officer said, "You're not in the UK." He said basically, taking his private part side, said, "I'll F you," basically, if you don't speak. So, and basically he said that they beat him quite badly. And his comment was, he said, "Wallahi." Wallahi means, it's like an oath, say, "I'm not lying," meaning by God, that I feel shy to describe to you what they did to me, basically. These were his exact words. I feel shy to describe what they did to me, basically.
Did he tell you that he was physically and sexually assaulted?
He told me he was physically assaulted. He told me he was sexually threatened. And he indicated, from what I know of him, when he said, "I couldn't, I feel ashamed to tell you what happened to me." As far as I understand that, and subsequently after that, basically, he was followed up by MI5. He said they came to his house. They were saying, knocking on his door. He pretended that he wasn't there, but they were knocking so much, he thought to himself, like, "Look, you know what, I need to kind of come and show my face." So he came out, he spoke to the MI5 agent, and they were saying, "Look, we just want to have a chat with you. We just want to speak to you."
So when did he tell you this?
This is roughly about 6 months ago. Roughly.
And what was his reaction to being approached by the security service MI5?
Yeah, the situation was that, his wording was, Ak means brother, they're bugging me, like they just keep, they won't leave me alone, basically.
Did he explain what they wanted?
He mentioned that initially they wanted to ask him whether he knew certain individuals, basically. That was the initial issue. But after him saying that he didn't know these individuals and so forth, what he said is they asked him whether he'll be interested in working for them.
Do you think he did end up doing any work for them or not?
No, I mean, he was explicit in that, he refused to work for them, but he did confirm that he didn't know the individuals, that they asked him whether he knew.
Well, there's a lot of allegations there, Richard. We'll come to them in a second. But on the MI5 point, a lot of people watching that will be thinking, that was MI5 doing their job. No, absolutely. I mean, we don't have any way of verifying this, of course. But what I would say in general terms is that the security service will, of course, approach people to provide information or even act as covert sources. This is part of the work they do more generally. I don't think we can expect them to comment on the specifics of this case. But I think in general terms, it's not out of the ordinary to expect the security service to approach people for information.
And in terms of what we heard about Kenya there, I mean, Kenya for some people is a tourist destination, but Kenya for some other people is a route into Somalia and to joining Al-Shabaab, which is an Al-Qaeda affiliate, and also Kenya itself has had a severe terrorist problem.
Yes, indeed. It certainly is. And, on this man's account, we hear that he was picked up by the Kenyan authorities. Again, we don't have any way of substantiating this at the moment. It's plausible as a story, one could say that. We will have to wait and see whether we can actually get other corroborating evidence to back that up.
And in terms of your interviewee, Abu Nuzeba, what was his reaction to these horrific events a couple of days ago? And if he knew, would he have done anything to stop something like this?
Yeah, he was quite clear, actually, in the interview. I mean, he is quite open about having been influenced by Bakri Mohammed al-Muhajirun, this Islamist group in the past. However, he was very clear tonight in saying that if he had been told, which he said he wasn't, about any plans for these kind of horrific violent attacks, he would have done his best to dissuade this young man from carrying those out. He says it's not justified.
And his reaction actually to what he saw then?
Yeah,
the horror that everybody else had, or?
He tells me he was horrified by it. Yeah, he couldn't believe it when he saw the images. He couldn't believe this was the young man he used to hang around in 2002, 2003. He was very, very shocked.
Well, he came to our organisation sometime in April 2012 with members of his family who'd spoken about the approach to him and the immediate members of the family by the security services. And they were in a state of great worry and really didn't know what to do. He himself was in a semi-paranoid state or a completely paranoid state, according to the caseworker who met with him, but also his immediate family members had been approached by the security services, particularly in order that he work with one close relative who was approached by the intelligence services while he was living and working abroad. He was offered some money to go and talk about his relative, and of course that left him in a state of great distress because he didn't expect possibly that he'd be approached while he's working abroad. We have also the case of another relative who was approached in which this person said that it left them in a state of great distress as a result of them approaching him to talk about their relative. It looks clearly to me systematic. It's something that was happening regular. They were clearly seeking to approach Mr. Adebolajo directly, and when that failed, indirectly by immediate close members of the family, and I think that happened at least on 5 occasions, if not more.
He's one of the key figures, seen on the left as a young man and on the right as he was filmed on the street in Woolwich after the murder. And this is Michael Adebolajo, who was raised as a Christian And we think this is an important point because when we look into the background of both the young men that have been concerned with this horrific act, their background is Christian. So this is the other gentleman, another Michael Adebowale, and as it says underneath here, he was also raised as a Christian. From the sources we've been looking at, most of the evidence appears to be that these two met at Greenwich University. But we'd now like to take you through what we've managed to piece together about what was going on. And we're going to say as strongly and forcibly as we can, we do not believe the British government is telling the truth about who these men are and what their backgrounds are, and indeed what really happened on the day. And of course there are now many websites, blogs and other people who are piecing together evidence and saying what the British public was shown and told had happened in Woolwich does not seem to be exactly correct. So it was pointed out, and I think this is a significant point, that Michael Adebowale in his earlier days was friends with Lance Corporal Kirk Redpath. The young soldier was unfortunately killed by a roadside bomb in Iraq in 2007. But if we go back into the roots of this young man, not only was he mixing freely with other white youngsters of different religions, but he was also very happy to have a young man who subsequently went on and became a soldier as part of his friends. Well, this is the first thing that comes out. People close to this man talk about him being recruited by MI5 at university with the specific task to infiltrate Muslim groups. And it's being suggested that in 2010 he was sent to work for Al-Qaeda in Somalia, and that is itself significant. Eventually he's arrested in Kenya under suspicion of involvement in the CIA Al-Qaeda plot, and the family claimed that he was tortured before being deported back to Britain, where following his arrival in Britain they also claimed that he was continually pestered by MI5, so much so that in 2012 he was forced to contact a lawyer in order to try and do something about the harassment. If we have a look at his friend and colleague, Adebowale, he becomes involved with Nigerian and Somali gangs, so we've got the common theme here of Somalia. And ultimately, his behaviour and trouble with the gangs puts him in Feltham Young Offenders Institute. And around the same time, we can't be sure that it was afterwards or before, but what his friends and family report is that this young man has not only converted to Islam, but he is suffering personality changes. So from a quiet, well-behaved young Christian boy, having got involved with gangs, but also gone through this institution, he's a changed personality. Now, significantly, this aspect was picked up by the Mirror in a story. There was quite a lot of detail, and it was clearly pointing a finger at the possibility that he had effectively been reframed or coerced into a new role within Feltham Young Offenders Institution. But we think it's significant that this story was then taken down from the Mirror website, and we had to do some work in order to retrace that story. The gentleman that Louise has just mentioned is this man, Ibrahim Hassan, and he was the person who was giving an interview with the BBC, and the next minute the police arrive and arrest him. What this man was describing was the MI5 harassment and also sponsored torture which was taking place in Kenya. So he's yet another person accusing Britain's security services, that includes MI5, but MI6 of course involved in this, in torture and the use of their own agents. As a result of this, he's arrested under the Terrorism Act 2000, and as far as we know, he's still being held at Southwark Police Station. But he produced material, which is including a number of letters, which have been sent to Malcolm Rifkin, Conservative Chair of the UK Intelligence and Security Committee. But if we simplify reports in the paper, what Mr. Rifkin has done is simply to defend MI5. So we would like to say to viewers and listeners today that when we begin to do a little bit of research into this terrible event, it is by no means as straightforward as the mainstream media would have us believe, and it would certainly seem to tie in with the fact that MI5 has regularly been accused of using agents to stir up hatred overseas
And stir up hatred in this country as well between different races, you know.
This seems to be
what's going on at the moment, the backlash of it all.
Yeah, this seems to be the key point, that something is going on here. Why do you want to divide a nation? Because, of course, if you can divide a nation with violence, it's so much easier for the state to control. So this is part of that Mirror article. It's pretty clear. Woolwich attack, gang member and drug dealer Michael Adebowale was radicalised in jail at 17. So this was a very detailed article, and obviously there are key questions. How could a man possibly be radicalised in jail, and what was the role of Britain's security forces at the time that he was in prison? The Guardian here produced another extremely interesting story, and this is about a Cornish lady who happened to be passing the incident in a bus and decided that she could help, so she bravely got off the bus and then confronted the attackers. And in the Guardian article, it describes in great detail why she did what she did, how brave she was to actually stand up to the men. Of course, they were still armed with knives and a machete at the time. But we just picked up a couple of comments from this article, which we thought were interesting. She described herself as naturally right-wing, and she had said, "I don't agree with the socialist thing where they praise everything rather than praising hard work. I'm proud that we are now represented by David Cameron rather than Gordon Brown. I voted for him." She also goes on to say that the killers should now face severe punishment, and she says if it were possible, then yes, they should die a painful death. But we can't do that, unfortunately. So our comment on this is, while we admire this lady for her bravery in confronting the people concerned, it does seem rather unusual that we have somebody who is not only describing herself as naturally right-wing, she's a big fan of David Cameron, and that she thinks that people should die a painful death. This doesn't seem to us to fit in with the picture of what we would call a good Samaritan.
I apologise that women had to witness this today, but in our land, our women have to see the same. You people will never be safe. Remove your governments, they don't care about you. You think David Cameron is going to get caught in the street? When we start busting our guns, you think the politicians are going to die? No, it's going to be the average guy like you and your children. So get rid of them. Tell them to bring our troops back so we can... Apologise that women had to witness this today, but in our land, our women have to see the same. You people will never be safe. Remove your governments, they don't care about you.
He then walked. Then walks back up the road, back towards the victim of this attack who lies prone in the street. A young man, believed to be a soldier.
He's of Nigerian background. His family home, or his mother at least, and perhaps a stepfather, it's not quite clear, moved to Lincolnshire at some point. He appears to have stayed living in this part of southeast London. He's of Nigerian background.
At the Royal Artillery Barracks in Woolwich for us now. And Martin, what have we learnt then about the suspects?
He's a British man. He's 28 years old now. He was born in Lambeth in South London and grew up largely in this part of Britain. He went to a school in Romford. There was a... there was a family home in Romford at some stage, and he also became a student at the University of Greenwich, where he lived in 2 different flats at halls of residence in the years 2004 and 2005. He's of Nigerian background.
Fake video or doctored video broadcast by the news media. Well, it turns out that in fact this is the doctored video. I'll tell you why. In London we have road markings called red routes, and these are 2 lines on the road in red paint. You'll see in this video the lines are orange, the same colour as the man's hands. Here, as if the alleged terrorist has no blood on his hands, when in fact this is the genuine clip.
Two suspected terrorists killed a man in broad daylight in a London suburb.
We obviously are urgently seeking, and the police are urgently seeking, the full facts about this case, but there are strong indications that it is a terrorist incident.
The death of a soldier in Woolwich has shocked the nation, especially in the brutal way it was carried out. But what has also risen again in some quarters is the argument over Islam and its place in society. One of the alleged killers used Islamic slogans in a video at the crime scene, suggesting they were motivated by faith. Just such a simple spark needed to ignite a fire, and overnight protests on the streets of Woolwich. This has shone a light on some divisions which bubble below the surface. These may get some publicity, but invariably do not reflect the wider opinions.
He used to attend a few years ago some of the activities that we had, demonstrations, processions, attending some of the lectures, etc. As far as I'm aware, he was this normal practicing Muslim, and I believe he's a family man. You know, he's a very calm and non-violent man. I mean, even from the clip yesterday, you can see that he was concerned and apologising to any women and children who were there.
There is no evidence, there's no video of these men coming out and running over the soldier and beheading him. There's no video. There's no evidence. And if so, there is, it must be destroyed by government. I mean, this is a perfect way to frame somebody, to blame them on this kind of incident. Just like the Boston Marathon bombing. You know, those guys didn't even know they were going to get blamed, and they were at the scene at the wrong time. How does this happen? We don't know. They must be targeted, but it's a shame that it has to come like this.
So I've gotten off the bus and realised that there were a couple of helicopters overhead and there was a lot of police. And then they covered the body with a body bag.
The armed unit trying to disarm the 2 men. And 1 man was in the middle of the road bleeding profusely. And, and then the ambulance started driving.
Eyewitness photos posted on Twitter show a number of men on the ground and police cars blocking the street. Another shows the arrival of an air ambulance. Aerial pictures of the scene reveal the road littered with knives, and beyond that, a police tent covers the body of what's thought to be the victim.
Metropolitan Police have given their version of the chronology of yesterday's attack, saying local officers were on the scene within 9 minutes of being called. Armed police followed 5 minutes later, but the entire incident, from the car ramming into the victim to the suspects themselves being brought down by police fire, lasted 20 minutes.
It began just after 2 p.m, a bustling street in South London on a crowded spring afternoon. Several witnesses saw a blue Vauxhall apparently hitting a pedestrian before mounting the pavement.
The body had been, there was no head on the body as well. So at that point, I think we began to realise, this was something more serious.
Brave onlookers tried to help the soldier, kneeling down next to him despite the men still brandishing weapons, but there's nothing they can do.
You were saying that your friend's mother went to comfort the victim the victim of the attack.
My friend and her mum walked up the hill. As she walked up the hill, she said, "Can I go help him?" And she went and sat next to the victim.
She said that's one of the two attackers?
Yeah.
And after that, when he see me to filming that, he came straight to me. He said, no, it's cool. I just want to talk to you. I just don't want to, you film me that, And I was continuing to film it. I was a little bit scary to filming that, And after that, when he was taking time to talking in front of his camera, my camera, I was like, okay, all right, and I'll continue to filming. And when he finished filming, he go there. He go to the for the dead body. Straight. I think 2 minutes after, the police van coming, then they start shooting, you know. He wants to explain his message, why. That's the message you want to give it. And he knows, talk to someone, but he knows if we filming, maybe we're gonna give it to the newspaper, maybe we're gonna put it in YouTube, and the message will go.
Shooting outside of a Las Vegas courthouse. Holy unbelievable. Hell of a morning for jury duty.
Kill this man, oh my God. They done killed this man. Oh my God, he got to be dead now. He dead now. If that ain't dead, he dead now. If that ain't dead, he dead now, bro.
Shane Webb had been watching from the window of his tower block. He quickly realised that what was unfolding below was far worse than he could have imagined.
If you didn't know from it now, it'd probably be something out of a movie or something, you know, but it's terrible.
I think it was 10 to 3 o'clock, travelling down Mulgrave Road in the van with my colleagues. We heard gunfire, so we immediately stopped the car and run up to the end of the road where we just saw armed police run into some bodies in the road. There was an old guy on the corner who'd seen the whole lot and said that two guys, black guys, had pulled up in a car, mounted the pavement and run someone over. They proceeded to get out of the car and decapitate the white male and then stopped, dragged him out into the road. We could see that male when we turned up. It looked like he was wearing a Helps a Hero t-shirt. Armed police were there and obviously shot the two black males in the road. As soon as the gunfire had gone off, that's an unmistakable sound, and obviously people started pouring out their houses and it got busy very quickly. The police got there pretty quick as well, like more backup, and they cordoned off it pretty quickly, and yeah, they done pretty well. It was pretty gruesome. It was surreal. It was like something from a film. People were just shocked, absolutely shocked. You hear about things like that in other countries, and seeing here most of it with your own eyes, it's pretty shocking.
Lauren, I just wonder if you could tell us what you saw.
Okay, I've seen a body lying in the road, and I've seen the police and a crashed car and all the helicopters looking for the suspect.
And when did you arrive? Did you arrive quite soon?
I arrived probably about 5 minutes after the incident happened, and yeah, I've seen the body lying in the road and thought it was a road traffic collision, and then later it found out that it wasn't. It was an attack, a terrorist, related incident.
And you said you saw the body lying in the road. Did you see what the gentleman was wearing? Were you able to see that?
No, I think he was wearing dark trousers and he was a white Caucasian male. And yeah, but I do now know that he was wearing a Help the Heroes t-shirt.
Right, and what about the two people who it's believed may have been the people who did it? Did you see
I've not seen them directly, but I know that they're from Afghanistan apparently, and attacked this man with a meat cleaver and beheaded him, and then asked members of the public to take pictures of them with this dead body.
They asked members of the public to take pictures of him?
Yeah, onlooker, and then there was females covering the body of this young man so that they couldn't taunt him any further.
Right, and and what were you doing in the area? Were you just on your way home?
I was on my way home from Lewisham on the bus, and then this has all obviously happened.
I see two geezers leaning over another geezer, and I thought they were trying to resuscitate him, because I thought he was the one in the accident. So, like, we parked the car in the garage, and we started walking up, and as we started walking up, there was a lorry there, already parked there, and a little car come along. And he got out, and he said, call 999 or something like that, and next minute, he's pulled the gun out from behind the back of him, black handgun, which takes 12 to 15 rounds, and he's just shot off. And then I walked back, because I see the handgun, because I knew what the handgun looked like. So as I come back, a little bunch of school kids come up, and I shouted out to them, get them in the school, there's someone up there with an handgun at the end of the road. So they all got back in, and we just come back in then, and then we went back out again, and my wife went up towards the shop, because she went over and told the school that there's someone up there with an handgun. But she went up there, and then next minute she see them, because I thought, I heard bang, 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 4 times, and it was them who got shot. So what happened is, as I drove round the corner, I see the car on the pavement. I thought there was been an accident on the, because as I drove round the corner, there was 2 people leaning over, and I thought they were trying to resuscitate him. There was a bloke against the wall, and next minute, I've gone down the road and parked in the garage, which I only live down the road from there, and then another bloke's come along and told me that they're actually stabbing him. But apparently they actually run the car into him and knocked him down before they'd done anything. And then next minute there was a bloke come along in a little silver car, and he got out and he shouted out to everyone, someone phone the police. So he phoned the police, and then next minute what happened is he actually pulled an handgun out. And as he had the handgun, I mean, it's one of them guns that takes 12 to 15 rounds, so I know it's definitely an handgun because I actually see it was a black handgun he had in his hand. And next minute I see the silver car shoot off, and I told me and my missus to get back down because we was going to go up and have a look to see what was happening. And basically that was it. And then next minute, as I was standing outside my back gate, a load of school kids come up, and I shouted out to the teachers who was with them, get them kids in the school now because there's a bloke up there with an handgun. You know, so I mean I was more concerned about the kids because I don't know what he was going to do with the handgun, because as soon as he pulled that out, I panicked.
I've been briefed by the Home Secretary about this absolutely sickening attack in Woolwich in London. It is the most appalling crime, but there are strong indications that it is a terrorist incident. The police and the security services in the UK will get all of the support that they need to deal with this, or indeed with any other incident.
The Prime Minister, who cut short a trip to Europe to take charge of the response to what the security services have deemed a terror attack, also visited the barracks after delivering an unequivocal message to the terrorists from Downing Street.
The people who did this were trying to divide us. They should know something like this will only bring us together and make us stronger.
Remove your government, they don't care about you.
The people who did this were trying to divide us. They should know something like this will only bring us together and make us stronger.
Together to, you know, holes in stories, and as to why I don't trust the media, and you know, I keep my mind open, you know, what I hear from them, even you know, like private sources, sometimes they can lie, but all I want to do is advise you never to listen to what you're told. Do your own research and remain skeptical, like I said. And then in regards of what I saw, what I said before regarding Netanyahu and stuff, or any other government and stuff, you know, Israel, Britain itself, America, or any other country that, you know, in regards to this ISIS cell, which I said before, I'm not saying that they're, you know, all the, what I follow on to, I'm not saying all those extremists that are in that ISIS aren't terrorists, Muslim extremists, but what I'm trying to put across is that I do have ties to your agencies, mostly America, CIA, to say that they were basically planted there deliberately, false flag operation style, and it's just kind of odd in regards to that derived suspicion for you to claim that you don't have an acknowledgement, and even more that if you have put them there to cause that carnage, it's most likely you that are planning those operations which are false flag, which have been in Paris and wherever, Sydney and stuff, and then you're claiming that it's nothing to do with you first of all. You know, if that's true, that which it's shown a lot of ties to your agencies, there's suspicion derived on there. But basically what I was going to follow on to is, you know, even if they've been let loose in carnage and they need to, you know, this cell needs to be taken down, like I said, regarding, you know, of wars and stuff, and what follow on from there about the peace ideology. You know, like I was saying before, I think I left the Netanyahu's post earlier, is you don't really need armies, militaries to take out this terrorist cell. Like I was saying before, like the IRA or whatever they were, Ireland, you know, they were near enough like a paramilitary size cell, and Ireland, and they only needed a small regiment of the army over there as partly to control, but mainly it was probably something like Spec Ops, special operations like SAS and stuff. And it'd be no different to these terrorist cells and stuff, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, even if they've been let loose, to deal with, like I said, the use of military weaponry like bombers and stuff, and like whatever they are, cruise missiles and all of that stuff, you know, like big ass militaries. They're not needed against anyone else but another army, you know, like say of like World War II, like I said earlier, against a cell like that, special ops and stuff, spec ops, and like you know, like just a smaller faction of regiments of armies or whatever were needed to control or deal with them in the first place. And to me, the obviousness points out to these wars being regarded as false flag ops tied to them. And like I said, whether it's whatever you know, I'm sure you all know that it is these bankers telling you what to do. And what I said about that, if you don't like being controlled by them anyway. But like I said, it's just illogical, in my opinion, to be using military force against small terrorist cells which aren't militaries themselves. And you know, going out full out carnage on any country, same as Palestine, what I said before in that regards of that. You know, it's no difference about the cells over there. And you know, the force being used is just too much against very, very small cells, even in Palestine. Unless you actually have a different reason as to why you are firing artillery strikes. Like I said, you're the ones that make your decisions regarding how you deal with things. But this is how I'd see it if I was going to address as whoever it was, you know, in regards to dealing with any kind of criminal or terrorist threats himself in general. You know, that's how I see it. Now, regarding like what they were saying about Jeremy Corbyn, Labour MP, in his mission to, you know, peaceful, you know, I saw the Sun or something they were saying his loony ideology of peace and stuff. Now, you know, halfly it's kind of it's illogical partly on this ideology, but it's not loony. Now, regarding what Jeremy Corbyn's ideology of how he wants things to be dealt with in peace, you know, partly things can be between, you know, certain countries, certain leaders, like I was saying regarding Putin, regarding Obama, Cameron, etc., you know, regarding this possible war. You know, grown men with the responsibility to run all their countries, surely they can responsibly, as grown men, peacefully resolve any conflicts regarding a war, putting aside the fact that people who are most likely controlling the bankers, you know, and that would even point more to say that you're obviously being run and run on strings by someone else telling you not to do that, unless you actually can't, like I said. The jobs you've got and you know what you've said to do. You know, I'd assume, you know, grown men, especially how you speak in the Houses of Parliament is shown, the PM Cameron, you know, amongst each other. You know, you speak like grown men, you resolve things like gentlemen, and I can't see how you can't do that with regarding the opposition countries in this war, responsibly no different. And this is what derives suspicion and ties of these bankers actually telling you what to do. And like you said, so cool, I've got a motorbike here. But like I said, bad timing, it's so cool. He's doing what he needs to do. But like I said, you know, there's got to be something going on. If you, so cool, you know, if unless somebody's controlling you and they're telling you what to do, in my opinion, in regards to these bankers, or you know, you just want to go out all out war in your own eyes for money or profits. But like you said, if I was the United Nations and I was in it here and there, this is how I'd be addressing it as well, you know, appropriately between you all to say, you know, you grown men, you're running these countries, you've got these conflicts, and therefore a peaceful way, which is I being a grown man, and peacefully resolving these conflicts can easily be done, you know, unless you have a reason not to. So, you know, that's all I want to leave on that one. As I said, partly what's not logical about the peaceful, you know, ideology of regarding Jeremy Corbyn refers back to what we call threats and stuff, you know, like threats to security, terrorist threats and stuff. Now, I know they can't be resolved peacefully in those terms, but what I'm trying to put across is Jeremy Corbyn's ideology isn't as loony or nutty as it seems. And like I said, it's got a lot of logical reasoning to it, and it saves a lot of carnage and stuff in those countries where the people are living in them end up having war-ridden countries. And I'll leave it on there as short as possible. Cheers.